Okay, so while she works on that, my name is Kara Contreras. I teach at Brixner Junior High. I teach middle school science, so 7th and 8th graders. Klamath Falls is in Southern Oregon, and I am actually zooming in from my physical classroom. It has a lot better internet connection than my house.
So a couple housekeeping notes in addition to the Zoom guidelines that you see there. Hopefully you all have access to the Google Slides that we attached in the chat window so that you can follow along and be able to read the slides easier. We encourage you to stay in the live document while listening to us. This will be an interactive presentation, and there are several virtual whiteboard slides that I'll be referring to. We ask that you please don't jump ahead to work on those slides, and please be careful when clicking and moving things so as not to accidentally delete anything. On slide 56, the very last one, there are instructions for making a copy of this presentation, which you might want to do now before this version is changed, just in case you get some ideas from this and you'd like to use them as a template in the future. Remember that all the blue-eared slides are indications that there are activities to complete when prompted. And then the all orange underlined text are actually links to websites for additional information. And in the interest of time, we're going to save questions for the very end. Though we're only together for a short hour, since we'll be working together in groups on activities, we'd like to have some engagement agreements. In addition to our basic Ranger Rick rules, please add additional expected meeting norms on the following slide by double-clicking the Post-it note and typing into this. I'll give you a minute to do that, and throughout the rest of the hour, you can add additional agreements as you think of them. So go ahead and type into the Post-it note. Does everybody have that ability?
Kristen just joined us, so a reminder to check the chat. We have the link for the live Google Doc, Google Slides, I should say, that we're going to be interacting with. And we're on slide 5 right now, where you can add engagement agreements.
Can someone tell me if they can click into the Post-it notes? I'm not seeing anything.
My copy is, yep, they're working in it. Mine is.
Oh, okay. I just can't see it apparently. All right, well, I'm sure these are all excellent group agreements that we can all honor, so thank you for that. So here's our agenda. We have a lot to cover for the NWF education program overview. I'll be moving through these slides pretty quickly just to give you some context for what Kara will be talking about related to activities at Brixner Junior High, which is why we've included so many links for you to find more information. And then here are the session objectives for you to refer to throughout the presentation. Though Jenna Mendenhall, who's our moderator of this session, already gave a thoughtful land acknowledgement at this morning's welcome, we too wanted to pay our respects. While we're all coming together in this space from different locations, perhaps even outside of the state, I did want to take a minute to acknowledge that just as we are always in a watershed, no matter where we are, we're always on tribal lands. Whether we are in the city, suburbs, or country, among river, valleys, prairies, forests, foothills, mountains, beaches, and deserts, we are on lands and waters indigenous to Native people since time immemorial, including the Klamath tribes, which we will be mentioning later today. And Jenna also provided information about nativeland.ca. This is the website, which we invite you to enter your location onto the map to explore local indigenous territories and languages. In the interest of time, we're gonna move on, but we invite you again and encourage you to go check that out to learn more and to also explore how to create acknowledgements. And so there's instructions there for you. And now we're at our icebreaker activity. So we're going to do a short whiteboard drawing according to the following instructions, which we'll also put in the chat window. I'm going to do that right now. So please read those over. Kara, can you tell me how many people we have?
We have 8 plus, I'm just admitting one person right now. So 9 total. That does include us. So. Hello to our new participant. Check out our group chat. I will copy the link one more time just to make sure you get it as well, but it's a link to our live interactive Google slide presentation. And we are currently on slide 10. Okay,
I've put the instructions in chat. So I'm going to send everyone to a breakout room. I'm going to stop sharing momentarily. Okay, I'm going to send you off. See you in a little bit. Oh, I'm in a room with Jen. Are you there, Jen?
Hey, Morgan, it looks like they were all doing really well in there, so.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen now again.
Strong work, Jennifer, strong work. That's good.
Kara, can you tell me when everyone's back? I can't tell. All right, well, it looks like almost everyone's back.
They are.
So I'm looking at some of the image you're sharing in there. Those look great. Oh, wow, someone got fancy and Googled images. I forgot to mention that this was only from memory, but that's okay. So if you would like to learn more about the Monarch life cycle, you can check out NWF's Monarch Mission curriculum, which I'll talk about more in a bit. And we also included an image here of a basic life cycle if you'd like to see that and compare it to your own. Thank you for playing along. National Wildlife Federation is the largest grassroots conservation organization in the United States. We're over 80 years old. In Oregon, we really focus on environmental education programs and advocacy in concert with our state affiliate, the Association of Northwest Steelheaders. We also collaborate with Oregon Green Schools. Most people do know of us from our Guardian of the Wild ambassador, Ranger Rick. Kids have been growing up reading our magazines for over 50 years. We have an awesome Ranger Rick website with various activities to engage families and classrooms, so be sure to check it out. Eco Schools is the largest global sustainable school program spanning 69 countries and was developed by the Foundation for Environmental Education in 1994. Since 2008, NWF has been the national operator in the United States. More than 10 years later, we have over 5,000 schools engaged in the program. It's a holistic whole school approach that provides multidisciplinary and project-based STEM learning. It also complements other Green School program activities. I'm sure almost everyone in this Zoom room is quite aware of the benefits of environmental education, from improved student performance to a reduced carbon footprint. But there are other benefits that you can follow the link to learn more about. EcoSchools provides a flexible and self-guided framework that allows schools to build community by progressing through sustainability pathways to make positive, lasting change, all while gaining recognition. There are also various tools and resources, a few of which I'll cover in a few minutes, as well as an award system. The program is based on a 7-step framework that acts as a roadmap for guiding and implementing place-based sustainable solutions. You can see here that the EcoSchools program has 12 pathways of sustainability or environmental focus areas that schools can choose to work on. Today, we'll be focusing on schoolyard habitats. You can click on the link to learn more about each of these pathways. One of the steps is conducting an environmental audit, which involves assessing current environmental conditions with pre and post investigations that collect measurable data. Then, using those audit results, goals are developed with action items and a timeline. I've included an example that you can check out. These are all available for free on our website. I mentioned earlier that EcoSchools has several tools. These are 2 of them. On the website map, anyone can look up schools in their state and view a school's mini public web page called a dashboard. This is where schools display their pathway progress, including metrics, as well as awards earned and project photos. For each pathway, there are metrics that are collected. This is an example of a school's dashboard page on the right, showing their progress on pathway metrics. On the left, Brixner is actively working on their schoolyard habitat metrics, and you can see that students receive 90 minutes of outdoor learning a week and they have 1,278 square feet of wildlife habitat. Integrating pathway activities into classroom learning and curriculum is an important step to ensure the EcoSchools program becomes a part of the school culture. EcoSchools is aligned with national education standards, including NGSS and Common Core state standards. In addition, we have various guidelines, resources, and partner collaborations that you can learn more about. Here's an example of an NGSS education standard alignment that can be downloaded from the website and shows which pathways align with the standards. Now it's time for a poll question. Just for a bit of fun, here you go. And here are the results. Can everyone see those? It looks like 50% of us held our breaths when we were passing someone. And then quite a bit of cooking, working in PJs, judging some people, listening to podcasts or TikTok. Great. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Thanks for playing along for that little brain break there. I'm gonna share my screen again, back and forth. Okay, so why do we care about schoolyard habitats? It's all being together environmental education and conservation activities to create the next generation of stewards that will hopefully grow up caring about other species and the land, water, and air they need to survive. We know that wildlife are declining for various reasons, as indicated on this graphic, and we have a lot of work to do across the country and globe. What are schoolyard habitats? They're educational outdoor classrooms that blend learning and gardening for wildlife practices that provide the basic resources all wildlife need to survive. NWF's Garden for Wildlife program provides a way to certify gardens and receive recognition, and schools can also get a free sign in Oregon by contacting me. This is why we do it, right? It's all about connecting with nature. We know that people are generally happier and healthier mentally, physically, and spiritually when they connect to nature. Pets too. That's my Chiweenie dog. He's babysitting some showy milkweed, but basically he just sleeps on the job all the time. And then there are two options with NWF regarding schoolyard habitats to be recognized. One is more time intensive and integrates curriculum, while the other can be an easier first step and quick win before digging deeper with the EcoSchools program. I'll also mention that Oregon Green Schools, our partner in the state, is currently developing a Gardens and Grounds certification track that we are collaborating with them on. And then there are many steps involved in creating or enhancing the schoolyard habitat, from site inventory to design considerations before implementation ever happens. So it's important to know this going in for the best chance of success. So why monarchs? Why are we focusing on them when they're only present in a portion of the state? First of all, monarchs are iconic with their unique life cycle and epic migration. These pollinators really spark a passion in people to really rally around them, including children. Alarmingly, there's been a drastic decline in the monarch population since the 1990s, 99% decrease due to loss of habitat from multiple factors that we're really still trying to understand. And these are quasi-extinction numbers that we're talking about here. So that leads us to our Monarch Mission K-12 curriculum. This was actually created out of our Texas office, and while it's based on the Eastern population of monarchs, we found that it's adaptable for the Western population. Also, the concepts learned can be relevant for other butterflies and pollinators. You can download it for free from our website in English or Spanish, and it's a useful tool for tying curriculum to your schoolyard habitat activities. And here are some NWF resources that may be helpful in the future. And then on the next slide, we invite you through the rest of the presentation to include any of your favorite resources that you think might be helpful to others. You can come in afterwards and add these in too. So next we're going to do some dot voting here. So from your experience, what do you think are the top 3 common barriers and challenges for schools, camps, nonprofits, parks, anyone really when it comes to gardens and habitats? So grab one of each number and then drag it to your box of choice, ranking them. Try not to cover up the words so everyone can see them. And then if there aren't enough, we should have plenty of numbers, so we don't need to create more, but I'll give you a couple minutes to do that.
So again, this is slide 38 in the Google Slides.
Thanks, Kara. Looks like lack of funding is popular. Okay, bring us back together here. Okay, it looks like lack of funding, lack of equipment and supplies, knowledge, infrastructure, time, maintenance, a little bit of everything as to be expected. So now we're just right on time here. Just want to have a minute of movement to get you moving around a little bit. So this is optional and you're welcome to turn off your camera. Please do what's ever comfortable for you. So first we're going to make the American Sign Language sign for a butterfly. So if everyone wants to put their hands together, interlock your thumbs, and then move your wrists and wiggle your fingers. They're probably tired from typing away. Now everyone can stand up and you can shake those wings and let them flutter. Put a little hip action in it if you want. Okay, now if you would like to, you can sit on the ground with your feet together in the butterfly pose and take a couple deep belly breaths. And when you're ready, you can return. That was quick, but hopefully you're a little more limber from the butterfly waggle. Now Kara's going to share her experience and that of her students at Brixner Junior High as part of their schoolyard habitat journey.
Hi again, Kara, zooming in from my physical classroom in Klamath Falls in Southern Oregon. And I'm starting on slide 40 for those following along in the presentation. So living in mostly rural areas my entire life, experiencing nature and wildlife firsthand was pretty normal for me. And K through 5, I actually attended a 2-room schoolhouse in a very rural central Washington town, surrounded by hayfields, sagebrush steppe, and was really blessed with teachers and parents that valued experiential learning. As I began my teaching career, I became increasingly aware that most students were not connecting with nature in their everyday life as I had. So as a science and math teacher, I knew I could help change this trend, even if it was just one classroom at a time. So in my teaching career so far, I've taught high school math and science in rural Washington and Idaho, and now currently teach 7th and 8th grade science at Brixner Junior High in Klamath Falls, Oregon. To fill my schedule, I was asked to create a science elective course. I knew I wanted a course that could be as hands-on as possible, so I started reaching out to local groups for resources and ideas, as I had no textbook to fall back on. I reached out to my local U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service office and was connected with Akimi King, our local partners program biologist. And she began connecting me with several resources, one of which was the Monarch Waste Station program. And then in my search to learn more about how to start a waste station from scratch, I stumbled on National Wildlife Federation's online resources and was later introduced to Morgan. As I personally began learning more about monarch populations and the concerns and habitat loss, I knew it was a topic my students would also quickly become invested in as I had. With help from Akimi, I began creating a garden on Brixner's school grounds. And once connected with Morgan, I started using their Monarch mission curriculum and joined their Eco Schools USA program, where we later earned our Schoolyard Habitat Garden certification. It was really their NGSS aligned curriculum that was a huge help in creating a framework for the class, and then ultimately approval from my school district. So on slide 40, I've included the poster my students created for our new Eco School Club this past year. And at the time, I had challenged my class to flood our school with posters to help explain to other kids outside of our class why our garden was so important to monarchs. And during my pep talk for the poster assignment, one of the students called out, like a revolution, a monarch revolution. And that's how our Brixner slogan was born. So next slide, 41. I now use the Schoolyard Habitat as an overarching year-round project to provide purpose and student ownership in their learning. Not only does the space provide essential habitat needs for the threatened Western monarch butterfly population, but also provides hands-on experience and exposure to the conservation of water, energy, and wildlife resources. It has been really rewarding for my students and I to see the progress and change from just one year to the next. And it's really helped perpetuate students' pride and ownership of that space. It's easy to look at Brixner's garden now and share what it is today, but the real challenges were in the initial liftoff of the concept. So next slide, please, Morgan. Slide 42. These are some key pieces I believe led to the success of our new Schoolyard Habitat. Building connections and relationships are essential, especially with staff and community at the beginning. So the relationship I had built with my principal was instrumental in the initial approval of converting a random patch of orchard grass and weeds into the working classroom space. Once my principal was on board with the vision, she began calling in requests for certain donations on my behalf. Specifically, she had connections with the city's Public Works Department, who donated a load of mulch and the equipment to haul it in. Not only, not having many funds to work with, I had initially planned to simply disc the area and use the existing soil. But another teacher overheard my plans and offered to talk with a friend who owns a construction company in town. And the next day we had 2 loads of soil dropped off from a local construction site 3 blocks away. Once the garden began to take form, Akimi helped find milkweed plants and other native flowering plants for the garden. And specifically, a local nursery had donated several plants that had not been sold prior to the winter season. So as the garden grew, so did student and staff interest. There were now a waiting list for the ecology science course. So I started an eco school club that met before school hours to include any students who could not be a part of the class. I encouraged other teachers to use the space as well. And now the art classes often go out to sketch different plants. In the first month, many students would tell me, this is the first time I've ever planted. anything. How do I use this? I've never used a shovel before. This clump of soil is sticky. Whoa, it's like clay. And as I suspected, many of my students really had never had a chance to learn outside their classroom walls. At open houses and other school events, I made sure to have students show off their work in the garden to their families, and then I had parents offering some help for in-class supervision, field trips, and guest speakers. When we finally had gotten enough funds to purchase some materials, I worked with our local irrigation company in drafting a drip line system to help our plants fully establish during our really hot, arid summers. And in hearing that it was for a school project, J.W. Kearns waived the draft fee and gave us a school discount. At each step, I tried to make every garden decision and improvement student-driven. For example, mapping out pathways in the garden, measuring borders for materials, plant labeling, you name it. It often would have gone much faster with adult hands and looked much more professional, but I knew if the students had put in the work, they would take more ownership and pride in the space. So I only half joke when I tell each class that they need to come back and take their high school senior pictures in their garden. Lastly, don't be afraid to ask for help. I would not call myself a green thumb and definitely had several sleepless nights worrying that I was in over my head and that the little baby plants were not going to survive. But that's real life. The ups and downs during the project were exactly what my students needed to be exposed to, and problem solving is an essential life skill. So I recommend just asking for advice from anyone you can think of, local nurseries, extension offices, garden clubs, and retired teachers. No doubt there were a lot of moving parts that fell into place for the garden to get such a great start the first year at Brixner, but I believe if you have enough desire and drive, you can make just about anything possible with the support of your community. I applied to several grants that turned me down and talked to a lot of different businesses that were less than enthused to be approached for another donation. So again, these barriers are real life examples for students to see and experience and help problem solve. Next slide, please, Maureen. In my lessons, I try to weave in diverse cultural connections between humans and our regional wildlife. Specifically, we had several Native American students in our student body. In an effort to promote positive dialogue, I stress the importance of our local ecosystems and include a field trip for each ecology class. That takes us to the historical tribal lands in the Upper Klamath Basin. We visit on these field trips several local creeks that are historically important rivers to our local Klamath tribe. And we conduct scavenger hunts for native plants, birds, fish, and we do calculate the water quality of the streams we visit by keying out any macroinvertebrates, aquatic macroinvertebrates that we find. And without fail, we are always able to find some wild milkweed plants along the marshy banks of Wood River. So the red band rainbow trout and Klamath suckerfish are two species with strong ties to the Klamath tribe. So I make sure we research in class before our field trip. And then we're actually visiting those streams that the species use. As a community, we have a long road ahead for inclusion of all backgrounds and more authentic relationship building with our local tribe. But I found that focusing on wildlife and the important ecosystems on the landscape shows just how connected every human in the Klamath Basin is and has provided many opportunities in the classroom for more positive narratives. And slide 44 shows several of my students' work during our Fishes of the Upper Klamath Watershed Unit that I just mentioned, along with a couple drawings from our Monarch Revolution poster, and then one of my students with her endangered species diorama. My next door classroom neighbor is Miss Eddie, Brixner's special education teacher. And early on in the garden creation, we passed Miss Eddie's classroom on our way outside, and one of her students called out, "Hey, what are you guys doing outside of class?" It was a really good question, and one of my students replied and ended with, "Come see." And I remember giving Miss Eddie this apologetic smile and asking if it was okay for her class to come out with us for a quick peek. But at that point, it was just a pile of dirt and potted plants. So it really wasn't anything close to a garden at that point. Since then, Miss Eddie and I have partnered on several lessons where our students are paired into peer pals and typically ending in some sort of art projects. So I've included on that slide, one of my favorites so far was the creation of some stepping stones that we added to the garden. And then slide 46 is another interactive slide. So did you know July 27th is Take Your Pants for a Walk Day? I bring this quirky holiday up as I use these random holidays in my classroom, and you can find them at the link I've included. But not only do they usually bring a laugh, but they provide a chance for me to get to know my students, and I'll usually create a random would you rather question or somehow weave them into the day's lesson. So go ahead and grab a butterfly, and would you rather walk a mile like a caterpillar with your hands and feet, or for a whole day flap your arms like a butterfly when you walk? Or are you one of those people that are neither, and you don't want to walk, you prefer to sit as still as a chrysalis? So go ahead and grab one of the butterflies at the bottom. This is again slide 46, and drag it up to the line that best agrees with you. I'll give you a second to do that. So Morgan, I see them moving on my screen, okay, but I think our presentation one doesn't always show the live version.
Yeah, I found that out.
Yeah. I think we have more people willing to flap their arms like a butterfly when you walk. That'd be nice. A really good
That's all because of our movement activity earlier. They learned how to do that. So yeah, we're building on skills here.
Maybe on my next walk, I'll do a little arm workout at the same time. All right. So now slide 47. So looking back, there are definitely some things I would have done differently. And in an attempt to start the garden with virtually zero funds, I took many shortcuts that caused some hiccups down the road. The biggest being the soil. As I mentioned, the soil was simply dropped off from a local construction site down the road. So in my mind, I was thinking, great, local soil and free. But by the following spring, I was less than enthused with the now grass-covered garden that we diligently watered. The soil was filled with invasives, and lots of hours later, we were still fighting these orchard grass and pigweed plants. With higher quality soil, much of this would have been avoided, but it does come at a sticker price. In an attempt to rid ourselves of weeds, I took a peer's advice and used lawn clippings to try and shade out the weed sprouts. And our custodian helped students, pull in a bunch of grass clippings from the back of the school. And it did give us an immediate facelift, you can see in that picture on the slide. But unfortunately, many new grass seeds also were transferred in during this process. So it felt like we were back to square one. And I ended up buying weed barrier material, which has been the most successful method so far, but it would have been much more helpful to start with the weed barrier in place and then plant. I did have the foresight to label each plant with metal signs from the start, but during our tough freeze and thaw winters, the signs warped and the copper pieces would fall off. We ended up with several labels getting mixed up, and I had initially had a student in charge of this master garden layout copy with plant positions and names included, but that master ultimately had some errors and not all the donated plants had even come with labels. So it's a future goal of ours to include more permanent wooden signs to help ID plants as we get funds. I encourage planting in the fall, and in my novice view of the gardening, we had just gotten plants donated in the fall from that local nursery, and so I wasn't sure if planting in the fall would be as successful, but as a class we learned the root systems of plants actually transplant better during their fall dormancy than the spring growth. So students really had their doubts, as did I, but the spring growth proved us wrong, and we only lost 3 plants that first winter. And lastly, start small. Even just a couple milkweed plants at the back side of a building could be the start of something bigger. Building momentum for a project can take time, so don't get discouraged. For those wanting to start on a real small budget, at the bare minimum, I found that gloves and trowels are necessary for students to have each day, and you could even ask students to bring those from home. To maintain the garden through the summer months, I highly recommend a drip line system attached to a timer. This is a huge lifesaver for our plants and me, my summer sanity. If you're a classroom teacher, you know this well. Students don't always stay on task. So I quickly learned that it was important to have a board in my classroom with student names listed next to assigned tasks that rotated through the day. And not every day was a garden day. Depending on the season, it was either 2 or 3 days out of the week. And I try to keep as consistent as possible so that students know which day to bring their garden shoes. Because I quickly discovered that I had some fashionistas in my class, some guys and gals that did not want to get their nice school shoes dirty. So I have a closet in my classroom that students can keep their garden shoes in. Some future plans. Slide 49, as funds allow, we hope to add formal seating around the garden border to help convert the space into a true outdoor classroom. Once seating is available, it'll be easier for other teachers to use the space as well. And right now we typically take clipboards and sit in a circle outside the garden when we need to. We'd like to add informational signs, as I mentioned, and then expand our habitat to include more plants and trees to serve a larger variety of native birds and pollinators. And then slide 50 is.
So Kara.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Kara, we have 10 minutes left, so I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. Okay. This is
get to the activity.
Slide.
Great.
So some final COVID consideration thoughts. Currently, Brixner's plan is to go back as a hybrid model. So 2 days in the classroom, 3 days out of the classroom as a student, and rotating in groups. So the days they aren't in the classroom, they will have online content. But during those 2 in-class days that I have those students, I will be using the space as an outdoor classroom exclusively. And I used to do a more hard copy interactive notebook, but now I'll be using a digital version, and there's some great resources there that I've linked. So the Ditch That Textbook one. Oh, and sorry, I did forget the Green Schoolyards, and NAAWE has some great insight on kind of setting up those outdoor classrooms. And then for those really interested in how I run my ecology class, I have a classroom website, not just for ecology, but all my classes. So I've linked that there, and specifically some ecology lessons that I did during the COVID-19 season, if you're interested. And then if we have to go back to a purely online format, I plan to pre-record lessons in our Schoolyard habitat and do some virtual tours online, just to bring some variety to students' online learning. And that brings us to our last activity. This is, so slide 51. Go ahead and navigate to that slide, as you'll need those links. The first one is to a Google Slide copy. It'll auto copy for you, and you'll each work on your own individual copy. If this Google Slide doesn't work for you for some reason, use the PDF version, the second link. And this is an exact lesson that I used during the COVID season. It talks about the importance of native plants and pollinators, which I adapted from NWF's Monarch mission curriculum, and specifically their activity 3 habitat basics lesson plan. And in a second, we're going to split you up into those breakout rooms, and I'd like you to partner on working on page 2 and 3 as time allows, probably just page 2 at this point. And again, everyone's working on their own copy, but someone could share their screen and work together.
Kara, can you put the instructions in chat?
I will, yes.
And I'll work on the breakout rooms here.
Okay. All right. And then, yeah, it looks like we're running short on time. So I don't think we'll do a full 10 minutes, but we'll stay on a little bit after if anyone has questions for us on, more specifics.
See you later. How's everyone doing?
Hey, they're doing good. Yeah, they all have the links. So I think.
Okay. Are they able to get very far with the short amount of time?
Yeah, I don't. How much time is on the clock? I can't.
I'm gonna close it in a minute because we all.
Okay. Yeah, I think it gives them an idea, and I think
And
I will. Yeah.
And then I'll just I'll go to the butterfly chatterfall to kind of end on that, and then just if you have any questions, we're gonna stay afterwards.
Yeah, it was hard to copy and paste all that so quickly.
I know I was gonna grab it from your thing, but I couldn't tell if it was in there under slide. And it didn't show up in chat, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, it didn't.
It didn't show up.
Well, I checked with one group and it did, so I don't know what happened there. Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't show up for me.
I don't know. And of course, the jet planes started going over my head at our school.
Well, we managed to get it all in. I'm shocked.
It did get brought up, so if I could mention briefly the format before we do.
Yeah, go ahead, Kara.
So before we end, just a quick note on that lesson. Some of you might have noticed that the Google Slide format, I did an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper so I could print it for anyone that didn't have a computer. It's not ideal in Google Slides. So if you're an actual classroom teacher and want to implement these kind of interactive Google lessons, I recommend Google Docs over Google Slides, but you can play around with both.
All right, so we don't have time to do the next slide 52, but if you want to put anything in there at any moment in time, feel free. And lastly, we'll save questions for the very end because we'll stay on a few minutes afterwards. But if you want to take a moment to write a wish in the chat window, we're going to do a chatterfall. So wait for me to say click send, and then we'll all look at the wishes together and end on that note. And then the next, the very last slide, get in touch, has our contact information if you'd like to get in touch with us. Oops. Exit there. All right, go. Everyone send a wish. Beautiful. Those are beautiful wishes to end the session on. If there are any questions, please ask now, or again, you're welcome to follow up with us afterwards. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you.
Do you get a lot of monarchs coming to your garden?
That's a great question. We have had sightings of them. I have never personally seen them or found any of the eggs. We have a lot of milkweed plants at this point, so I haven't checked every single leaf for one, but I haven't seen them myself. It's something that if you are in an area where in the migration corridor, you can purchase monarch rearing kits, which I did plan to do this last spring, but since students weren't going to be in the classroom, I didn't purchase them this year. So that is something possibly next year, this coming year, if we're in class enough to purchase some of those monarch rearing ones.
So in Forest Grove, I planted plants, 15, 20 years ago. They've been growing, and never have we ever found a monarch. I know it's all part of the wish and the hope that we can bring back that migration route that used to pass through most of our areas on its way to Canada, is my understanding. But
Yeah, so the Portland metro region is a little outside of the historical migration, because typically they come up and they use the Columbia River system and then move into Eastern Washington. So there'll never be droves of monarchs, unfortunately, probably going through Forest Grove unless their migration routes change due to climate change affecting the weather and climate, whatnot.
I'll share just one more tragic thing. About a year and a half ago, I run a club at the school. I don't teach at the school anymore. And the maintenance people, in their wisdom, decided to poison and kill off all the milkweed that we had grown for 15 years. So that's just another potential problem, is people not understanding it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has weed in the name, right? Milkweed. Yep. And so there's a lot of connotation with that.
Got it. Yeah.
Education needed.
And for those still on, yes, monarchs is the poster child for the schoolyard habitats for National Wildlife Federation, but it's helping so many pollinators in the base of our foundation of our food webs. So we've just had fun. We have so many bees and birds, and we'll find frogs. The students love to bring me frogs, actually, that end up in the classrooms. For some reason, they like to come into our physical classrooms. So I'll get these random critters coming to my classroom. Can you put this in the garden? So it's fun to see other things, even though I personally haven't seen a monarch. Looking forward to maybe doing those rearing kits in the future.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop recording now.